Started a book. It's a small one. I think it's called Infocracy. It's you're combining like theocracy and information.
Right. I bet it reads really well.
It does, but it doesn't sound well. But it's been by some philosopher. But one of his arguments is that essentially he argues that big tech is the new oppressive force over people, where it's extracting our data and our desires for profit. And how these systems that are also mediating our parasocial relationships now, right? Like if I make a video, if I make a story post on my Instagram, there's an algorithm that is mediating who sees that and why they see it. Right? And so there's this new thing in between me and you that's not the internet. It's a in-between third-party thing. And it's inherently exploitive with like how it operates. And these media companies or these social media companies are soaking up so much information about us to sell for profit at the expense of like our well-being, our sanity, how they're all engineered for like, that slot machine kind of effect to keep scrolling.
It's terrible.
It is, and yet we're on it.
Yeah, I have mixed feelings about it because on one hand, I think like, man, I don't know if I'm contributing. Recently, I deleted all the social media apps off my phone, right? Because it is so easy to just get in this mindset. And especially if you're in the creator space, to just think I could always be consuming, I could always be learning something new. There's something maybe I could react to.
Yes, I'm missing out on the conversation.
Yeah, I'm missing out on the conversation. And I have to say, I was way happier after I turned it off or after I deleted all of those off my phone. And that puts me in an interesting space, right? Because I'm part of that problem.
Yes.
Some people get on social media and consume my content and they stay on because of me. So yeah, it's something to wrestle with. Am I doing enough good to justify the evil that is being caused by me on this platform?
Exactly. And also you're a pastor, right? So Pastor Paul is the official name.
Correct.
And you pastor a Lutheran church, which we're going to talk about.
Yep.
But you're actually embodied with people doing real life community and shepherding of people. And you're also on these platforms making content that I think is great about, resisting fascism and all that stuff. But I wonder like how you thread that needle between your embodied reality and being online, because I'm not sure about you as someone who's been chronically now online for almost 4 years. I've almost developed, have you ever seen Severance?
I've seen bits and pieces.
Okay. So the idea is like an innie and an outie. And I almost think I developed that with social media, like my innie self versus my outie self. I don't like how that makes me feel. I don't like how I'm disassociated when I'm at home with my kids.
Totally.
But also people are like, hey, the work you're doing is helping me and you're exposing this stuff and that's so great. So I see the need, but also I'm like, I don't know if this is healthy long-term at this level of engagement. Totally. So I'm kind of curious for you how you navigate that. Yeah,
it's a tricky thing. I mean, I always go back to those disciples, right? 11 out of the 12 disciples were martyred, right? This is not... Those of us who have gotten into this game, so to say, like, I'm not expecting a happy ending in a lot of ways. Like, that's not fair for my partner. That's not fair for if we have kids. But that's kind of the reality that Christians face, or at least that's one of the things we should be facing. Oscar Romero says that the church cannot exist without being persecuted. If it's not being persecuted, it's not actually being the church. That blew my mind at 12 years old, right? Going to my wealthy suburban Lutheran church where I was thinking like, we're not persecuted at all. Like I trust Oscar Romero. What are we doing wrong? So there is an element that I think suffering is going to be a part of it, but it's like, when is it an acceptable amount of suffering for me? When does it feel like I'm actually doing good on these platforms and not just spiraling? Like, is my spiraling actually good? Like that video I most recently posted, I got to bed at like 1:32 a.m. because I saw this video and I thought I need to respond to this. And then my wife is waiting for me in bed, not sure when I'm going to come back. And I'm like recording late at night. And yeah, you never want to put the people that you love, you never want them that to be their sacrifice too. But that's part of it. Like that's that's a terrible thing.
It's also frustrating because right-wing media is so on social media, and they're shaping narratives that affect real people, right? Like, I'm sure you've seen accounts like Libs of TikTok on Twitter that are shaping narratives where people are calling bomb threats to schools and to hospitals because of this misinformation, right? So in a way, I feel like we have to be in these spaces. But also, I think the more I do this, the more I realize just how unhealthy these spaces can be. And also, I think I'm realizing too, how putting my sense of self-worth into how well a video does or how many followers are attached to a name is kind of an illusion. And really unhealthy. And maybe this is not my therapy session, to be clear. I'm a therapist for this. But like, I'm just thinking about that. Like, I'm just thinking, you are a very calming voice, But I am thinking about this, like, even long term for the organization, for me as a human, how I balance how much I care about right, the feedback I'm getting online from people, and how much that plays into my sense of self-worth, or how great my day feels versus how it doesn't if my video does good or bad.
Yeah. Oh, it's really hard. And thankfully I have a lot of friends who are close to me who, when I see a video, when I have 2 or 3 that don't do well, right? It's just like, okay, cool. I guess I've lost it. That's because that's what it plants in the back of your head.
Yes.
It's almost like you have to view posting on social media kind of like going into Chernobyl. Like, I'm going to go in, do the work that needs to be done, and I'm going to get out.
Yeah.
Because long term, this is cancerous for me.
Yeah.
The metaphor actually holds together pretty well.
It actually does. No, it does. It does, because you're right. We have to fight back. Right?
Yeah.
Obviously, fascism is taking over. Christian nationalism is really emboldened right now.
Yeah.
It's hurting people, especially our most marginalized neighbors. I mean, I know you and I were talking before we started recording about, like, we feel an obligation as white men to do what we can to kind of be like, look, we want to join the conversation and talk about this stuff, so hopefully people who look like us hear what we're saying, because we know it can land different sometimes, right? But I mean, talk to me about, this is what's so interesting, because I grew up in evangelical fundamentalism and deconstructed, and you're like, yeah, I never did. I had a great church experience. So I'm like, oh my gosh, what is that like? Now, look, in all seriousness, I overall had a positive church experience until things fell apart. But the theology wasn't great. You were telling me how you didn't really talk about hell a lot when you were growing up, and I was like, well, that's all we kind of talked about. Like, I prayed the prayer many, many times, so I didn't burn in hell forever. And here you are, deeply involved in church that's so different. You're like, yeah, it wasn't really a thing in my tradition.
I'll be honest, Tim, I don't know if I remember our church ever talking about hell. And I know.
I just can't. Are you sure it was a real church?
I'm pretty sure. Yeah. Well, this is the crazy thing, right? So we have these internal Facebook groups, right, for ELCA clergy and that kind of stuff.
Which stands for what, by the way?
Evangelical Lutheran Church in America.
Thank you.
Not of America.
Okay.
No Christian nationalism here.
Okay.
We're boring, but we're not Christian nationalists.
I'll take it.
I mean, at least most of us aren't. That's another conversation. But in one of these kind of closed Facebook groups, someone asked the question, did your church grow up talking about hell? And I was expecting, because these are people in their 50s, 60s, 70s that are in this group, I was thinking this is going to be a lot of people talking about hell. But I read 30 responses, and maybe there were 2 where they said, our pastor talked about hell, as this was like a major part. This is not like, wow, it's just not in our conversation. And so I can empathize, or I can't really fully empathize with that trauma, but I know my friends went through it, and I know how catastrophic it was for a lot of them. You have a God who is waiting. You have a God, honestly, who is like a horror villain, who is waiting to hit people over the head with a hammer. It's like you take one step out of line and God will kill you.
Yes, that's right. No, that's correct. And in the way the theology I got exposed to was known as Calvinism. Yeah. So not only was God waiting to do this, God had predetermined who he was going to do it to and who he wasn't going to do it to. And there was no rhyme or reason. And you just hope that you were one of the few lucky chosen that was predestined before the foundations of the world, while everyone else was damned because they're so evil, but they could never actually be redeemed. And so and there's a whole world of theologians and books, right, that will defend this and that teach you that this does not make God out to be a moral monster. Like, there's books by John Piper and John MacArthur, dozens of them written about how this is actually not problematic. And so, like, your basic human instinct and first sense of rational thinking of, like, actually, if I treated my kids like that, if I predestined one, to be loved and one to be damned, no one would think I'm a good father. They have a theology and a
like a framework.
What's the word I'm looking for? Philosophy. Thank you.
Yeah.
You know, that works to tell you that's not real. God's just and loving and good still.
Yeah, you have to deny such like a massive part of your brain of like your just regular, I feel like your regular logic to look at that situation. Any parent who treated their kids this way would be considered a monster.
Right.
They would be arrested.
Right.
Do we have an abuser God or not?
Right. But that bears the question I have to ask.
Sure.
So then in your Christian tradition, what is salvation? Because the next question becomes for us, well, if hell isn't central to this thing, or maybe for some people not even a part of it, then why did Jesus come in the first place? Because again, you're taught that Jesus came to pay the penalty for my sin. So when I die one day, I don't burn in hell forever. What other alternative is there? You're a pastor.
Yes.
Educate me.
Yeah. Well, so within the Lutheran tradition, a lot of us reject this idea of atonement, right? That Jesus came to atone for our sins. Because if you think about that for any amount of time, God the Father has to have his son killed because of something God the Father set in place, right? Which still makes God a monster. Like that is still a monstrous belief that if you have to kill your child to make yourself less angry at people. And so we as Lutherans, if we get rid of this atonement theology, which a lot of us do, we would just say Christ came to teach us how to live with each other, to teach us about grace, right? This is something you're going to hear me say like 15, maybe you need a little grace counter at the bottom of the video. But Jesus came to teach us about grace. Jesus came to teach us a different way to live, one that's wrapped up in the love of and compassion for our neighbors, not that's so focused on our own salvation. Grace is a gift. It's not something we earn. So in a way, it is kind of similar to that idea of the elect, but everybody's elect.
That must be nice.
Yeah, it was really, it was a great childhood.
But then it was a great childhood.
I loved it. I'm here.
All of us listening are like, must be so nice to be taught that. But then what happens when you die? Like, is there a heaven? Is there a hell?
I would say, I'd say there's a heaven. So here's the tricky thing, maybe where I might go a little bit away from other Lutherans. I would say I'm an annihilationist.
Okay, yeah.
Which is you're familiar with the term, just for other folks who may be watching.
Yes.
Annihilation is this idea that rather than hell being a permanent torture state, this is just a destruction of the soul.
Right.
I don't think that is done to punish people. I think that is done because God would never force anybody to eternal life.
Right.
So this is the way I kind of weasel through or work my way through, because everybody's got to do you're doing some twisting with any theology with the Bible. But Jesus talks about hell.
Yep.
And this is my way that I can make some sense of that.
Yeah.
And feel like, okay, Jesus is still compassionate. God isn't forcing people into this permanent afterlife.
Right.
Because in a way, I also feel like that's kind of monstrous.
Right. Yeah, Tim Mackey from the Bible Project.
Yeah.
He talks a lot about this idea, and his argument he makes is that in the creation story, the fruit is like a sign of a gift.
Yeah.
And essentially the idea is that, you can forfeit that gift of eternal life. And so he argues that annihilationism is the idea of forfeiting essentially eternity,
Yeah.
And I tend to land where you do, because and this might not be the greatest framework for this belief, so don't hold me to it, anyone. I'm not saying you have to subscribe to this, but one of the reasons I reject universal reconciliation is because I just don't want to share a hammock with Hitler.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, I think that's fair.
I don't want that dude in the place I am.
Yeah.
So I want to think that there is room for actual justice for people who commit horrific things and never repent. And I also don't want to believe that, God is just can't wait to punish people, everyone, most people, for all eternity because he's maniacal, right? Like at one point, does eternal conscious torment become torture and not justice? At what point? Is it 1,000,000 years, 1,000,000,000 years?
1 second.
Right. But that's my point, right?
Yeah.
So I tend to reject universal reconciliation for that reason, although I love the idea. And I hope that if God is way beyond us, which obviously they are, if that's the case, if reconciliation is the truth, then it works out. But in my limited framework, I'm not sharing a hammock with that guy. So annihilationism is the answer for me right now.
I think that's fair. Yeah. I wrestle with this stuff all the time. I have a good friend of mine, Sarah, who's always trying to twist my arm towards universalism. And there's also something that's profoundly beautiful, right, in that. Now, there's a way that can be twisted to make people who are abused forgive their abuser.
Right.
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 That's the shadow side of this kind of false universalism.
Right.
Where you don't have any reconciliation taken part by people who are hurting others.
Yes.
But there's something that's profoundly beautiful about the idea of reconciling to all people.
Yep. Yep.
And so I hold both of these things like, man, that looks really good. And also like annihilation, that also looks really, really good. which is why Lutheran pastors generally don't get in trouble for heresy. Like within the Lutheran church, there's you can believe a lot of different things within the ELCA.
You don't have a lot of heresy hunters in there? That must be nice,
No, well, now I have a lot of people who call me a heretic, but...
Is that because you're fully affirming? Is that why?
That's part of it, yeah.
It's always that.
It's that and my stance on the Bible, right? My stance on women's ordination, right? My
things that you would think wouldn't be that like...
My stance on abortion.
Right.
Which that's probably the weakest argument, I would say, for heresy. Like I can understand, you could say that I'm a heretic for thinking women should be ordained. There's some historical precedent for that.
Sure.
To say I'm a heretic for believing that people should have right to abortion access, that you're just using that word because you think it sounds nice.
Yeah.
It doesn't, there's actually no like historical heresy around abortion.
Most people don't realize that even in, I think it was the 1970s, Christianity Today did an article, I think with 25 theologians and scholars asking this question, and they couldn't find consensus. And they all agreed that ultimately it should be up to the woman to make that decision, but they couldn't come to a consensus on what the Bible did or didn't say about it. And this was like a few decades ago. But thanks to Jerry Falwell and the moral majority, it's become such a wedge issue. But I do want to ask, because you're Lutheran, but you're wearing a collar.
I am wearing a collar.
I don't want to sound disrespectful.
No, not at all.
But in my limited understanding, I thought only priests wore collars.
Yes.
Because that proved that you can forgive people's sins.
Oh, interesting.
I don't know.
No, that's fair.
I'm really out of my depth on this conversation, but I'm just kind of curious.
A real quick history lesson, because I get it all the time.
Okay.
I'm used to it at this point. We Lutherans used to wear something called a ruff, which if you've ever seen a photo, or if you've ever seen a picture of Shakespeare, it's that thing that's around his neck. So that's used to be the Lutheran sign for clergy. Some people still wear it, but it's pretty antiquated. Like nobody, if I wore that, all I would be doing all the time is just explaining what the heck this thing is around my neck.
Maybe it's a little attention seeking if you're wearing that, like, look, I'm very different than everyone else.
Which of these is better?
Yeah.
So the collar started in the 1830s. A Presbyterian pastor was trying to differentiate himself from the Catholic priests that were in town. So this is on the Wikipedia page. You can look this up. And there are some other sources. I'm not just citing an unsourced Wikipedia page. So they used to wear a black shirt with a white necktie, with a white bow tie. Yeah. That was their way of indicating that they were Presbyterian clergy. Because the Catholic priest would wear a cassock, which has 33 buttons and is basically a dress and kind of has like these high neck things. There's a Latin name for them, but I don't remember what it is, I'm sure. So the collar started off as a way that Protestants could identify themselves as separate from Catholics. And so most mainline traditions, you'll see clergy wearing collars, especially for worship. This is something that almost every Lutheran pastor will wear a clerical for worship.
Okay.
But we don't wear it throughout the week, usually.
Okay.
The reason I started doing it way back when is because I was in a small town and people who are members of my congregation were going to see me all around, all the time, right? I could not, if I was going grocery shopping, getting gas, going to the bar, I am always surrounded by people who are in my congregation. So it became a sort of a uniform for me. I used to wear a tie. I wear these blue shirts and a tie, and that felt like weirdly Mormon missionary-esque. So I gave up on that, and I just started wearing the collar. And it is something that you have to explain to folks, right? But we've been wearing collars since, for at least 100 years now. It's just people don't know Lutherans as well as they know Catholics.
Well, when I first saw you on Instagram, I was like, oh, this guy must be Catholic.
Yep.
I'm just saying. And
then
I saw Pastor Paul. I'm like, wait, no, he can't be Catholic because they don't address themselves as pastor, So it's kind of like a mind twist where I'm like, wait, the collar's throwing me off compared to the name.
Yes.
But I discovered your content. And I was like, ooh, I like this. This guy is like really talking about things that I think are super important right now because, it's one of those things where when you tell the history of something, it sounds so extreme and you wonder, how could we get there as a country? Yeah. And then as you're living through it, you see how it can happen, right? Like right now, as of this recording, we're watching people get swept off the street who are legal green card holders, et cetera, by plainclothed police officers and being whisked away, sometimes with no lawyer present. The lawyers don't even know where they're going. Trump is, as of this episode, is trying to undo legal protections for 500,000 migrants. And you wonder like how people tolerated things that sound eerily similar back in the day in other countries in the world and the early 20th century. You just wonder how we got there, and then here it is happening now, along with rhetoric that is so dehumanizing, right?
Incredibly dehumanizing.
Yeah, and so what's it been like for you? I mean, you're someone who grew up in this, maybe we can say, I mean, at least from my vantage point, well, not even sheltered, just more progressive theology and Christianity.
Yeah.
I think maybe both politically to a degree and theologically. What's it been like for you watching the rise of this like Christian nationalism kind of come into power?
Oh, it's horrifying because like for me, Christianity, I had such a good experience of Christianity. Reading the Gospels, reading the book of Acts always led me towards justice for my neighbor, always led me towards my marginalized neighbor, that we are called as Christians to care for these people. And Jesus says this again and again and again. But if we look throughout history, there's a lot of times where people have used Christianity as a means to gain power. That this is something that happens. I mean, you look at the history of popes, for example, not to say anything bad about my Catholic siblings.
Oh, no, you're throwing shade.
No, they're great. There's some I get along with really well. Some I don't, and that's fine. But it's horrifying, right? Because you have this thing that's beautiful, and all of a sudden you see, like, imagine you have this model car, right, that you've worked on your whole life, and it's beautiful, and you love driving around a racetrack, and then you see somebody use that same car to drive through a huge crowd of civilians.
Right.
Just people who, and now everyone's association is like, oh, that's the car that was used in that horrific incident.
Right.
And so I got to figure out, like, do I buff this car? Do I...
Yes.
Do I convert to a different religion? Like,
yes. Yeah. But here's the tricky part too.
Yeah.
And listen, I think we'd all admit no denomination or mainline, and nothing is perfect. Any Christian, anything has plenty of problems in it. However, in this moment in American history, the data shows that white Protestants and white evangelicals are the two religious groups largely responsible for how we got here. And I would argue out of the two, white evangelicals even more so, because I think it was 80% of white evangelicals voted for Trump. I think it was like something like 62% of white mainline Protestants voted for Trump. Still in the majority, but not that 80. And also white evangelicalism has a whole network of well-funded institutions that disseminate this stuff, right? Yeah. And so, yes, I agree with you what you're saying, but from my vantage point, and for a lot of people who grew up like me, it's like watching our exact car model, right? It's not just watching a Ford. It's like watching our Ford F-150, this edition, be the one ramming through people. And we're like, wait a second. I drove in that thing for a lot of years, and it never did this.
It doesn't have to do that.
Nor does it have to, right?
Yeah.
And so it's really jarring to know that not just Christianity, but the flavor that raised me, that radicalized me to be this Jesus follower, is largely responsible for the rise of Trumpism, being anti-democratic, and all other kinds of stuff. I mean, Turning Point USA, this is all a product of that. And I think deep down, I'm still trying to work through my own thoughts on how I reconcile that, because it's very jarring to grow up singing songs about Jesus loving all the children of the world. And now you have those same people who taught me those songs cheering the deportation of their parents. Yeah. And you're like, wait, the math ain't mathing here.
Yeah. Yeah. I think anytime Christianity gets proximity to power, it gets corrupted. Like this is one of the reasons why I used to be really worried about kind of the downfall of the church. Right? Like that less people are going to church now, less people are affiliated with Christianity. Yeah. I actually think that might be a good thing now, because Christianity cannot be Christianity if it is so close to power. It becomes just a vehicle for people to gain power. And now, like, I know for a fact nobody going to seminary within the ELCA is doing it because it gets them power. Like, they don't get money, they don't get power, they don't get prestige. Like, they're doing it for the right reasons. Hopefully.
The power piece is interesting.
Yeah.
And I think it's important because we often say that Christian nationalism is Christian, but it's antichrist. Yeah. Because if we watch and read the gospel accounts, Jesus is giving away his power in so many different examples. I mean, the idea of even the incarnation, right? God embodied as a human, a huge pouring out of power and control. And it's really interesting to watch certain theologians and pastors really twist those narratives to make it seem like, no, God wants warriors. God wants a powerful army of people that want to take back the country. That's got to drive you crazy as a pastor.
No, it does. I see Jordan Peterson talking about how Jesus wants people to be strong. And I just think, like, did you read the Gospels?
Yeah.
Are you familiar with how this story ends?
Right.
Like, Jesus died on a cross. That's not a powerful thing to do.
At all. It's a humiliation ritual.
That's what they did to slaves.
Yeah.
Right? When Spartacus had that uprising, they crucified everybody who rebelled against the Roman Empire. Like 11 out of the 12 disciples were killed.
Right.
By the state.
Right.
Jesus says, like, let the first among you be like the last. When his disciples are arguing about who should sit at his right hand of the throne and when he comes into glory. And Jesus says, no, the first of you must be like the last. You must serve each other. Like when Jesus is washing the feet of his disciples, he's doing slave work. And so when people then twist and try and say that Jesus wants us to be strong, Jesus wants us to be strong and have power over people, that's completely antithetical to everything I understand about Christ.
Why do you think it's so popular? Like, how do you think how do you think that language works? Given the fact that if you just read it, in particular the four Gospels, it's so not that.
Well, it's hard. I gotta say, as somebody who's read the Gospels a lot, it is hard to read Jesus saying, "Take up your cross and follow me," and think that this is going to lead to my losing power, losing status, losing my wealth, losing my very life. It would be much easier if Jesus was just saying, I want you to be powerful and abuse that power to hurt other people. And so there's a huge incentive for people to twist those words. But I think anybody who reads the Gospels, honestly, like, you can't come away with that thinking that Jesus came to be an earthly king, because he didn't. Like, he could have, supposedly.
No, I pause because I agree with you. And yet I know that there are so many pastors out there who are blatantly misrepresenting all this.
Yeah.
I mean, there's the New Apostolic Charismatic movement, or New Apostolic Reformation, people like Lance Wallnau and others. Take dominion, take over. We have a call to destroy the spiritual strongholds, and people are really eating this up. I mean, this whole world of charismatic theology has exploded. And then, of course, you have your more like dominionists, your Doug Wilson types who aren't charismatic, but very much believe in taking over the country. And it is, even though I've been covering this for so long now, it still kind of leaves me speechless to be like, if you just read the Gospels, if you just do what you told me to do, take the Bible at its word, be one of those literalists, those fundamentalists, just read the four Gospels, you would get such a different understanding of how Christ teaches us to live. And yet these people insist that they are just speaking on behalf of God, which says, or who is saying, they have an obligation to take over the country and make it Christian again. It's the mythology behind that. It's not based in fact. No. America was not founded as a Christian nation. Nope. This idea that God wants you to take over nations and make them Christian is nowhere in the text. In fact, if anything, the story of the Israelites, if you're going to pull this, if you're going to pull anything, teaches you maybe you shouldn't want a king, like at all.
That's like the whole point of kings.
It's just wild. It's wild to see how they how they go, well, Trump is our guy. Trump is our Cyrus. Wait, that if you're going to pull again from the Hebrew Bible, the whole point is that they wanted a king, and God gave them corrupt kings that essentially oppressed them. And you're telling me that we want a new Cyrus in the White House, and that's the Christian position? It doesn't make sense.
Or a new Jehu?
That's even worse considering the violence behind that, right?
I did my research.
Right. Yeah. No. You did. Yeah. You must have watched my episode of Matthew Taylor.
I did.
I mean, poor Matthew. He's a great scholar. He's crying in the chair you're in because he knows how dangerous this stuff is. This stuff absolutely leads to violence.
No, it does. And it's not a violence that has any redemption, because it's just about the power of the person wielding violence. I've talked about violence just on the edges because it's profoundly easy to get sucked into the idea that I need to use violence to further my power. Right. And I really believe the only time that you should ever use violence is if you can sit with the people whose family, like let's say you think that you have to murder somebody in some situation. I think the only possible, and again, this is like a 0.01% of situations where that might be the right thing to do. If somebody is Gandhi talks about, if somebody is running around the marketplace with a sword, your duty might be to kill that person if they are killing other people. The only way that you should be even considering that is if you are willing to sit with that person's mother at the funeral afterwards. If you are willing to go to their graveside every year on the date that you killed them. If you are willing to fully let the violence of your actions impact you and not let it turn you callous and not turn this person into an evil entity, but rather view them as a beloved child of God. Like, I think that's the only instance in which violence can be possibly usable. And like almost every instance that we see of violence in the United States is done for the power of the user. And yes, there's this whole narrative around like, sometimes you have to be a wolf to protect the sheep. Like all of that, just absolute crap. But it's always done to just make the person who is using violence feel powerful. And they don't feel any regret about it. If you can use violence and regret that every single day for the rest of your life, even if you thought maybe this is the least bad option, that's the only time where I feel like it's acceptable.
Well, let's talk about that. Let's listen to one of your videos on this that kind of took off the other day, and we'll make sure that we play it.
Yeah.
For the podcast audience. But here's the video that I saw that I was like, I want to talk to you a lot about this because I've had some thoughts about this.
That's
so,
fair.
All right, let me play the video here, and then we'll go from there.
I think we have to get ready for violent resistance. This is a video of plainclothes federal agents kidnapping Rumeza Ozturk, who is here on a student visa. Ozturk's attorney has not been able to reach her since her client was detained. On Tuesday, the day that Ozturk was arrested, a federal agent ordered ICE and DHS to keep Ozturk in the state of Massachusetts. But that federal judge's order was immediately violated, and they moved Ozturk to Louisiana for undisclosed reasons. Her offense was co-authoring a piece that called for Tufts University to divest from Israel and recognize the Palestinian genocide. I've read the piece. Nowhere in it does she mention Hamas or call for violence. That piece seems to be the only reason that federal agents disappeared her on Tuesday. This is what a fascist state does. It uses secret police who are above the law to detain people who are considered enemies of the state. So far, the Trump administration has mostly targeted folks who are here on visas, revoking those visas without any legitimate cause. But this is a test case to see how far the Trump administration can go. If they get away with this, they are going to do this to U.S. citizens as well, declaring them enemies of the state and denying them due process, as they've denied all of these people due process. If you work for any agency that's doing this work, you are engaging in fascism. You are the people that we were warned about in history books who just said they were following orders while they were doing the devil's work. That is sinful, and you will have to answer for your actions to God. What Oscar Romero said 50 years ago to Salvadoran soldiers is pretty apt today. No soldier is obliged to obey an order against the law of God. It is time that you recover your consciences and obey your consciences over an order that is sinful. I don't want to see a civil war in our lifetimes. The results would be absolutely horrific. But
okay, then you restart the reel.
Yeah.
So let's talk about this idea of violence. I mean, first off, that video that we've all seen is horrific, and I completely agree with you with everything that you said about this being fascism and horrible. And those agents should be ashamed of themselves for participating in this, right? And it's a weird thing, man, because I want to follow a nonviolent Jesus. I'm also aware of Bonhoeffer. I'm also aware of a Black liberation theology, right? I'm also aware of even MLK, conceded that like sometimes violence could be seen as like the voice of like the unheard, the ones who are most oppressed. Yeah. How are you wrestling with this? Because I know how dangerous violence can be. I know how it can be dehumanizing. Yeah. And also if I'm being real with you, I have asked myself the same question of like, maybe my own new dogmas of like nonviolence need to be a little more nuanced, but treated very, very seriously and thoughtful before I would capitulate that in even at that 0.1% degree, right? Yeah. How are you thinking about this right now?
Yeah, I haven't talked about it a lot publicly. it's something I privately wrestled with a huge amount, because as we look at instances of mass suffering where some sort of fascist state is rising to power, every once in a while, nonviolent resistance does work. Every once in a while, that does in fact happen, right? We have the singing revolution that happened in some small Eastern European country, and I'm sorry, I think it begins with an E. But there's a singing revolution, right? All of these people poured out into the streets, and they sang, and they were able to sort of overthrow the Communist Party at that particular time. But when we look at like a lot of other fascist states, right? Like when we look at fascist Italy, when we look at the Nazi regime, when we look at even like the Serbian kind of regime that was causing genocide against Croatians and Bosnians, like most of those ended because of violence against them. Even I would say like the way that the UK treated Ireland, that ended because of the Irish rebellions against them, because they assassinated enough people. Now that's horrific, right?
Right.
Because there were many, many innocent people who were caught up in that.
Yeah.
And so I wrestle with it. Like Bonhoeffer is, also a Lutheran, we like to claim Bonhoeffer. One of the things that Bonhoeffer wrestles with is like, this is going to go on my eternal conscience.
Right.
To be a part of this plot to kill Hitler. And also it's going to go on my eternal conscience if I don't do anything.
Right.
And in some ways, like that is like the least bad option. But I think the thing that worries me, the reason why I haven't said anything publicly about it, is because, man, we love violence in the United States.
I know.
This is one of the things that pisses me off so much. It is easier to show a gunshot wound on TV than it is to show a nipple. Right?
Yeah.
One of these things is profoundly offensive to Christ, I would say. The other thing Christ needed for to exist.
Right.
Right? But we have this super strange attitude towards violence, that violence is okay, that we can show violence to our children and think that's not going to have any negative effect on them.
Right.
So I really worry about it. And I also think like, man, I studied the Yugoslav conflict as a part of my college class because I wanted to take a study abroad class, and that was the last one that was available, which was, it was a downer of a trip, I got to say, that whole time.
Yeah.
But that only ended when NATO intervened. Because they put soldiers on the ground. Now they did it, I would say, in a pretty about a nonviolent way as you could, creating safe zones and bombing troop formations. Not that that's nonviolent, but when I look at fascism, it comes to power because it's willing to use violence against its opponents.
That's right.
And when its opponents aren't willing to use violence in return, that kind of plays into their hand.
I know.
You hear me wrestling because it's not.
And I wrestle with you.
Yeah.
Like, and listen, we're just two people. We're not going to be violent anytime soon, to be clear.
Yes.
You know,
I am not going to start a rebellion against the United States government
or anything. This is more of just like a philosophical, and kind of like ethereal discussion. But
now I'm on a watch list for sure.
Yeah,
if I wasn't
for
before,
sure.
So believe me, it's not going to be. I am not going to be starting up anything.
Exactly. Yeah. To be clear, if you're listening, but look, I think about this, right? And this kind of plays into it. I'm not sure if you saw a few months ago at Turning Point USA's America Fest, Cenk Uygur from the Young Turks spoke to Charlie Kirk on the stage.
Oh, sure.
Okay. And I was there in the room. I go every year to cover it. Yeah. You can watch my video on YouTube. But I'm watching, so Cenk is like this, he was known to be anyway, one of like the biggest progressive news voices in the space. There's been a lot of drama with him and his organization, but he goes to this event, to America Fest, which is just the full-on Christian nationalist mecca. And he is talking to Charlie, and he's not really pushing back on Charlie. He's trying to find the common ground. Mm-hmm. He's like, yeah, we can agree on this and that, but we could disagree here. And it comes across very much like Cenk is trying to, reach across the aisle and say, Charlie, I get it. You guys won. The Democrats suck. I get it. They did a horrible campaign. We're going to still fight for some of this stuff that we disagree with, but we can make it work. Yeah. And the reason why he got lambasted, and by the way, including me, I also responded to this, is because I don't think Cenk understands that people like Charlie are not looking to work together.
No.
They want to destroy who they think are their enemies.
Yeah.
They don't want to give power back up to their political opponents. They are working on the third term initiative right now to try and change the Constitution to get Trump reelected. And so one of my concerns, look, you can ask anyone who knows me. I'm a pragmatic person. I want to find the common ground. I want to work together with people. I do, and I really do. But you can only do that if two people want to do that. If one wants to routinely take advantage of you and one wants to routinely, make it seem like you're not doing enough and kind of almost gaslight you into believing like, no, I want to do the thing, but you're always coming my way. Yeah. And I'm talking, of course, about politics here. That's when I go, I think you're wasting your time, because we know for a fact, statistically, thanks to research by the PRRI group, that Christian nationalists are not inherently into democracy. They are not into pluralism. They don't want to work together. They view Democrats like demons. Yeah. And so that's what I think about what you're saying, where it's like, well, if they don't want to play ball, but we want to play ball, we're always going to keep losing, because they're never going to concede a point or concede power, because their whole system is built on taking power, conquering, and moving to further take ground to take over. And so that's why I struggle with the violence piece, because I'm like, what else will stop that? Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. I think historically, well, and like you think if you're having a conversation with somebody and every once in a while they punch you in the face and you're like, they won't punch me in the face again.
Right.
Like, okay, how many times do you have to get punched in the face? Now, again, it's a really nuanced thing, because violence is so easily corrupting, right? I've watched the John Wick films. Like, yeah, that's every kid, like every man's dream in America, right? Like, somebody killed my dog. Like, that means I get to kill a lot of Russians, and like a lot of people are going to be widows. And
right.
It's Dad's wild. Not coming home. Sorry, because this looks really cool.
Right. Yeah. Like, it's like almost like a fetish. It's crazy.
100%. Yeah. The redemptive violence, right? This myth of redemptive violence.
Yeah.
So I push back on this idea of violence. And also, if you were at a negotiating table and, like, imagine if the Ukrainians used nonviolent resistance. How do we think that would go for them?
Right.
I think you could also make the same argument for the Palestinians.
Yeah.
That the way that the state of Israel is trying to commit genocide against the Palestinian people.
Right.
I don't think they care if they kill a bunch of Palestinian civilians.
Well, yeah.
No, I think Hamas is obviously horrific, and they've done terrible things as well.
Right.
I wouldn't be surprised if Hamas did the same things if they had that level of power that Israel does. But right now, one of the states is acting as a terrorist and bombing innocent civilians, and the other one is a terrorist group that's bombing innocent civilians. But we get on this idea on the left, politically and theologically, that if we can just talk to people, we can find common ground and we can negotiate them with them, and we'll be able to figure something out together. Like, I just need to talk to them. And I'm guilty of this too. I think this from time to time, that I can just talk people into respecting human rights. But I think we're past that point.
You think so?
It sure seems like it in a lot of ways. Now, again, I'm not calling for violence. Like, I don't think we need to go out and like attack our neighbors or anything like that. For sure. No, definitely not. Like, the right has no qualms about using violence.
Right.
Absolutely none. And so as long as the left has no qualms about using, as long as the left is saying no, violence is absolutely off the table, you're trying to have a conversation, but the other person keeps punching you in the face.
We're just in wild times, man.
Yeah.
Like, the fact that we had Elon Musk give a Nazi salute in celebration of Trump's inauguration, and then watching people, especially Christians who are like, we're truth tellers, be like, no, he was giving his heart out. Yeah. And then that other guy, what's his name? He claims to be an Anglican priest, but he's not.
Oh, the guy that I did a video on. I did so much original research for that video.
He's something, I've known him for a long time. He's something else. He's been defrocked 1,000 times.
Yeah, 4 different churches have removed him. Yeah, what's his name?
Calvin something,
Johnson.
Something like that.
Thompson?
So he did the same thing to again, a round of applause. Yep. And then Steve Bannon did it at CPAC to a round of applause.
Totally.
And I'm like, wait. And then, it's funny because you have your far right guys like your Nick Fuenteses who are like, yep, that's what that was. And then you have your left people who are like, that's what that was. Yep. Then your moderates and your right and like your Ali Stuckies are like, well, he was just giving his heart out. It's like, guys, even the actual Nazis know what this was.
Yes.
Right? Like no one's besides you. You're the only people trying to gaslight us into thinking what we just saw in front of our eyes was not what we saw. Yeah. And so that's happening, right? The executive orders that Trump is trying to do just tries to magically erase part of the Constitution, or ending birthright citizenship. Yeah. Okay, all this is happening, and we're a couple months in. Mm-hmm. We're a couple months into this. Yeah. And you have to ask yourself, why do we tolerate this as normal? This is not normal. Mm-hmm. This is not normal. And people are hurt, and they're going to keep getting hurt. I mean, the fact that we have an unelected billionaire who is just wreaking havoc through the government with his team of 19-year-olds who have no qualifications, stripping funding from USAID, taking food out of the mouths of children who need it. And the fact that we have, again, I always go back to the Christians, the fact that we have Christians who are like, well, it's just the reset that we all need. I'm like, you cannot be that ignorant. You cannot be that ignorant, but maybe you are. And so I do feel that sense of like extremism where it's like, this is extreme. This is extreme. I'm sure you saw that video of Elon with his child on his shoulders next to Trump in the Oval Office with no suit, right? Just totally disrespectful, the whole thing. And Trump's just sitting there like a little pawn. And we're watching this, and the right wing is like, this is great. Like, is it? This is great? Mm-hmm. And so I just think, like, I wonder for you as someone who's a pastor who is like, Jesus-centric, but also very much all about the liberation of our neighbors and our own and ourselves, how you look at that and like, what do you do? Because people feel so paralyzed by this moment.
Yeah, there's nothing that I can do, right? Like I can't access Elon to talk to him or anything like that.
Right.
Like he's not going to listen to what I have to say. He's so bound up in that idea of power. I think we can take hope in organizing locally.
Yeah.
Like finding people that you know and that you trust to subvert power.
Yeah.
No, I'm not talking about pouring sand into gasoline tanks because that would ruin a car. Don't.
Right.
I'm not saying that.
Right. Don't do that.
Don't do that. But like, there's little ways that you could be subversive in your areas. Because we have to get over this whole like I'm going to post my opinions to social media and that's going to change people's minds.
I know. I know.
And I'm guilty of that too, right? Because like
same.
I post to social media with the goal of changing people's minds. And sometimes it works, but most of the time I think, unless you are like a large creator, it just doesn't.
Right. The
people who like you and like your opinions are going to say yes, and the people who don't ignore you. So I think some local organizing is really important. That you have to meet with people around you and find ways that you could subvert that power authority, right? Like Derek Van Orden is the senator that we have, or the congressman that we have in my district.
Yeah.
And so there's a group of us clergy that have gotten together and figured, okay, we can't go and protest Trump because we don't have the money to go to the White House or go to Mar-a-Lago where he's spending most of his time. But we could go protest Derek Van Orden, and we can do that in a way that he's going to hear from us, and we organize locally. So then you have some kind of power, right? Like you can shrink down a problem small enough. Like I can't solve global hunger. Elon Musk could.
Right.
He's choosing not to.
Right.
He'll have to answer to God for that.
Right.
That's a whole nother, every billionaire has to answer to God for that particular, for allowing that amount of suffering. But what I can do, right, is try and subvert authority somewhere in my local system. Maybe that's putting up stickers. Maybe that's running in local elections for some people. Maybe that is just gathering together like-minded people so that if people do start getting rounded up, you have a network where you can hide the people that you care about if you need to.
Yeah.
Like you need to be doing that work now.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that we're definitely there 100%, where we have to start thinking about the little ways in our communities to start working together to protect our neighbors and to resist, right? Because it's only, like you said in your video, these are tests. These are test runs, right? First, it was just about getting the quote unquote illegals out of the country, right? Yeah. Now it's green card holders, right? Citizens are absolutely next. Don't misunderstand. In fact, we know this because there was a couple of stories, one of which is tragic, where they deported a young girl who was a legal citizen who had brain cancer and was recovering, but her parents were not legal citizens. So they deported the child with her parents and left her out to a van in Mexico. This is a true story. right? So they're already testing it piece by piece. And so the question is, of course, like, well, what's animating this? And I think that what happens is that people, especially people out there, again, like the mainstream world, don't understand that this is a theological war for these folks. They are motivated by the belief that God has given them this country. Of course, that's steeped in whiteness and white supremacy, all that stuff. It's the key to all of this. Yeah. But this version of God has given them the co-signing ability to say, this is our country. We have to protect it from the outside foreigner, and it's our job to maintain it and maintain the power. And the result is what we're seeing today. Right, of just a complete, people. I hear people say online all the time, don't they know that by doing this to the government, you're hurting people? Yes, they know. Yeah, they want the government dismantled.
They've dehumanized those people. They are less. Yes. They are not beloved children of God.
Right.
Which again, like, seems antithetical to my whole understanding of Christianity. I thought we were in this, like, the Romans called Christianity a religion of women and slaves. When it started off, they said, why would you worship somebody who was crucified, right? The first, like, arguably the first depiction we have of Jesus is the Alexamenos graffiti, which is scrawled into the side of a Roman school where these Roman schoolboys would be going. And it is an image of Christ with a donkey's head. And Alexamenos is kneeling in front of Christ. This is meant to mock Christ, right? Like, why would you worship this person, this donkey who is crucified?
Weak, pathetic.
Yeah, weak, pathetic. Like, no power, no money, no influence. Like, what is that about?
Right.
So it's really hard when people take this thing that is weak in a lot of ways, right? Like, that is the power of Christianity, is that we have strength in our weakness. Yeah, and then turn it into a weapon, into another means to seize power.
I think what is distressful, though, for me is that, as I've had the privilege of talking to so many amazing people, Matthew Taylor and Jamar Tisby and so many others, it's clear to me that this was a plan for a long time.
Yeah.
People don't know names like R.J. Rushdoony. They're not household names. These are the people who formed this theonomy that undermines this whole idea of, like, take over the country, that crusader type of language. Yep. And I just don't know right now. I'm really stuck as a Christian thinking about, how do we resist this? How do we push back? How do we fight back, but also be faithful to the call of Christ? Because, if what you're saying is true, that there's a sense of the church is losing. The church is supposed to be on the underside. The church is supposed to not have a lot of power. What's the balance between that and having power to stop people more powerful from doing harm, right? Yeah. And then at what point do you become the very thing that you were trying to stop?
Yeah.
These are the paradoxes that live in my head all day.
Totally. Well,
so I need you to fix it for me, Paul.
Well, this is the dictator problem, right? Like, dictators seize power, and then the same method that they used to seize that power is used against them.
Right.
Right. And so I think about this. If you are not willing for your opponents to do this kind of thing, then you shouldn't engage in it yourself. But I do think on the left, especially like left theologically, we've totally abandoned language of the devil. And I think it's time for us to kind of bring that back up again, because it does feel like what's happening in this country is demonic in a way. That I see the people on the far right who are dehumanizing beloved children of God.
Yes.
Right? There's an organization that is specifically, I think Canary something is the name of it, but I called them out in my most recent video because they just try and dox people who are here on visas.
No way.
Yes. Yeah. I think it's the Canary Project or something like that. It's in my most recent video. But that's the whole thing that they do, is they just try and dox. So they're the reason that Ozturk was arrested.
Okay.
Because they added her to this watch list.
Oh my God.
Yeah, this is an organization that is just spending its entire time trying to dox people who are here on visas.
Oh my goodness.
And so I feel like that's demonic.
Yes.
That's not of Christ.
Right.
And when we don't name that, when we just kind of sit back and say like, oh, all God's children can be happy together. Yes, that's true. But if one of God's children is eating the other of God's children, you have to like take out that children's teeth.
Right, right.
Like, you don't have to kill him, but like make sure he's not going to keep eating the other people that are there.
Jeez, there's a whole group just doing that?
Yeah, that's explicitly what they do. And they were cheering, right? This woman getting arrested by plainclothes police officers. Oh my God. Woman who's a valid visa holder, whose only crime is being in some opposition to the U.S. government, who no longer has free speech, right? And like you said, they're coming for us.
Right, right.
And so when I use the language of violence, I'm not saying we have to go out and set up sniper nests and shoot ICE agents when they come into our communities. I'm not saying that, truly. Like, I'm not trying to wink and nod. I don't think don't do that.
Don't do that.
Don't set up sniper nests.
Yeah, we're just to be clear. Do
kill
not
federal agents.
do that.
That's a terrible idea in a variety of ways.
Right.
But like, we can recognize that this is something that's happening. Like, I think it would be fair for somebody to go and dox whoever is running Canary. I think that is probably the right move to do, to expose who this person is. Again, they've crossed that line. It's not like they're just saying bad things about somebody. They are trying to get people, like, there are commenters cheering and hoping that these people are executed when they return to their home country.
Wow. I mean, how do you keep your head on straight with all this? You know, like, I'm sure you see the news like I do, and it just feels so, especially when you're making content, it feels like you're just looking, it feels like you're have your mouth open in front of a fire hose, and the hose is this close, and you're just like trying to catch whatever you can.
Yeah, totally.
Right. And then you try to sleep like you're not soaking wet. How do you manage that for you? Like, do you have any routines, or do you just try and stay off the internet whenever you can? Like, how do you do that?
Well, I'll just name, like, I'm a tall, white, straight guy. So I can kind of walk away from a lot of this stuff in a way that my friends who are queer can't.
Right.
Or my friends who are people of color cannot. Or even my friends who are women cannot. And so that's always the struggle, is I don't want to use my privilege just to make my life easier. I spend time in prayer. I find that to be really helpful. Spending time with people that I care about is really helpful. Spending time thinking about what can I do locally in my community. Maybe I can't go protest at the White House, because again, it's going to be expensive and no one's going to listen to me anyway. But what I could do, right, is distribute stickers in my local community. Now, I'm not going to do this, but someone could distribute stickers in their local community that have sort of anti-Trump signs on them, and then you could go and put them on other Trump signs, just so folks know, like, hey, we disapprove of what you're doing. You could go and distribute those widely so that it seems like there's a network surrounding, right? In Serbia, one of the ways that Slobodan Milosevic was taken down, there's a lot of power pushing against him. He was the authoritarian dictator who kind of caused the whole Yugoslav set of genocides that was happening. And what happened is somebody took a garbage can and put his face on it and put a baseball bat and just set it next to the garbage can, because you were not allowed to say anything bad about Milosevic. And so activists went and did this. And then some brave individual came up and took the baseball bat and hit the garbage can. And then somebody else came up and hit it. And then soon enough, it started this whole demonstration, right? Where people could see, not only am I in opposition to this, all of my neighbors are in opposition to this.
Right.
Because there's so many horrific things that are happening in our country. And if you are stuck in that fire hose, you're going to lose hope.
Yeah. And we have to think about ways to mobilize, I think, in really... I think the reason why a lot of us feel frozen is because, frankly, I'm not seeing much spine from the Democratic Party.
No.
Like none. And I'm like, if there's any... listen, I'm not sure about you. I am not a hyper-partisan person. Like, like Adam Kinzinger, for example, saying, hey, the election wasn't stolen. Great, man. Like, cool. You're a Republican. We disagree on a lot of things. We can make things work with like good faith conversations. So I'm not someone who's like, Republicans are all demonic. That's not me. No. But, I was at the DNC when last year in August, and I'm watching all this happen. And of course, then the election and Kamala loses, Vice President Harris loses. And now I'm watching a Democratic Party, and I'm like, where are you? Like, this is not business as usual. And that's what's frustrating is, like, you're seeing things online by right-wing media pundits and also politicians, and you're like, wait, guys, this thing that this person just did does not call for a typical response of like, oh, that's not nice. We need a little more backbone, because Paul, I grew up on talk radio. Okay, I grew up on Rush Limbaugh and Sean Hannity. I did my whole life. So I know that this can sound hyperbolic and can sound almost talk radio-esque. I do not want to lose our country or democracy.
Yeah.
And I truly feel like, based on what I know and what I've seen, that there are people who are doing their absolute damnedest to get rid of both of those things. Because again, there's a mandate by God in their mind to take America over.
Yeah.
And I feel like Democrats that I've seen, in the media and doing their job are just like trying to still play footsies. And I'm like, this is not the time to play footsies. We need some spine. We need some resolve. We need some truth telling here.
Yeah.
And that to me is discouraging.
Have you ever seen the comic of the two drones side by side, and they're both doing a drone strike in Yemen, and the Republican one doesn't have any stickers on it, but the Democrat one just has a pride sticker on it, and like a free pride, and like free a BLM Palestine sticker on it. Yeah, like a BLM sticker. Yeah. It's like doing the same thing.
Yeah.
My frustration, I always want to say the DFL because I was in Minnesota for such a long time. My frustration with the Democrats is that they still want class exploitation.
Yes.
That their identity, they're trying to build this identity around, like both parties are trying to do class exploitation. Republicans are honest about it. They say we want a system in which many people can exploit a few people.
Right.
Democrats want a system like that, but they're just going to do it with pride colors, or with they'll put BLM on there or anything like that. Like, as long as the Democrats hold on to this idea that like the upper class knows best,
right,
they don't have anything to offer.
Nothing.
Like, truly, like
Nothing.
I was out in rural Minnesota, right? This is a place that was out in like Granite Falls, Minnesota, where I was serving. This is a place that has had something like 2/3 of its population leave because of those economic opportunities just weren't there anymore. And so, yeah, I get why these people are bitter. I get why these people wanted to vote for somebody like Trump, because they've seen generation after generation leave, go to the cities, and they've seen no economic opportunities in those rural areas.
Right.
What does the Democrat Party have to offer them?
Right.
Besides just like, when the Democrats just play with this idea of identity politics, this idea of you should vote for us because of this like superior moral standing.
Yeah.
That doesn't do anything for most Americans.
Yeah.
Like, it's just still the same class struggle that's like based around a few people accumulating a lot of wealth, right? We see Democratic lawmakers who are supposedly the good guys doing a huge amount of insider trading.
Totally.
As long as that's tolerated, you have no high ground to stand on.
100%. Yeah, the lobbying industry. I mean, like, yes. And, it's funny because, like, there is sometimes I hear people be like, you can't criticize Biden for, him, coming across as not really all there. And I'm
no, you should criticize Biden for that.
Especially after that debate. It was like, guys, look, I get it. In the beginning, I was like, look, I think right-wing media is just trying to find a new thing, a new trope. But after that debate, it's like, you don't make me deny reality again.
Yes.
I was already forced to, in my evangelical days, pretend that things that were blatantly not true were truth. Oh, no, the election was definitely stolen. Don't make me feel forced to be like, no, guys, Biden is sharp as a tack. No, things are fine. No, there's no problem here. Like, no, things are not fine. We have a problem. Yeah. And that's nothing against Biden. I'm sure he's a nice guy. I think if Biden ended up running again and still lost, let's say he won, he would probably protect our democratic institutions for better or for worse. We'd probably survive. But by no means was he like some saint as he's signing the bills and the money that's bombing children in Gaza.
Yeah.
Like, we have to call that stuff out too.
Yes.
But the problem, right, and this is why this is such a paradox, is that the left, I'm speaking broadly here, but like the left is willing to hold their own accountable, and sometimes even I think too strong of like a purity test for some different things before they just write them off. Yeah. Meanwhile, the right will work with folks like Matt Gaetz, who has credible accusations.
A known child predator.
Exactly. Yeah. And be like, oh no, like guys, it's a smear campaign.
He's our guy.
So you kind of have these extremes. Yeah. Right. And one extreme is like, we'll take anyone if they'll align with our message. We don't care what they do. Yeah. And the other extreme is like, if you say the wrong thing at the wrong time, the wrong way, you're gone. And also, there are people at the top who are like, yeah, let's sign the checks that fund bombs to kids in Gaza. And it's like, well, no, like that's bad. Don't do that. So it's a really weird place to be as someone who's trying to find a better political option, but looks at the right and is like, hell no. Looks at like the Democratic establishment and is like, not far enough.
Shoot,
in some
that's not
ways.
better.
Right, that's not better.
Yeah.
I mean, in some ways it is, but in many ways it feels like ill. Where do we go? And so it's a very interesting place to be right now at this moment, for people, I think, like you and me and many out there in the audience, where we're just like, where do we go? What do we do?
Yeah.
In light of this really powerful right-wing empire that is unified, that has strong media behind it, that has billionaire funding behind it, and now is taking over our president, or the Oval Office, the House, the Senate, and the judiciary.
Yeah.
That's a big deal.
No, it is horrifying. And you just pray that those judges, especially those Trump-appointed judges, hold on a little bit to the oaths that they took.
Yeah.
Because that's really the only thing holding this country together right now. And the executive branch is already testing as much as they can.
Totally.
Right. Just flagrantly ignoring. And one of these judges at some point is going to hold the Trump administration in contempt of court. And I don't know what that leads to, but that's
right.
Yeah. Getting back to what you were saying, I don't think the Democrats have any why.
Right.
They don't have any central, who are you representing? When you say everybody, it's like when a church says everybody is welcome.
Yes.
I saw that outside of Wisconsin Synod Church. I guarantee you I am not welcome in there. I would just have to out myself as an ELCA pastor, and they'd be like, actually,
okay, we'll put an asterisk
on that sign.
Yeah, right. Everyone asterisk is welcome.
Yeah, I can't even get them to talk to me most of the time. The person that I'm talking with right now, that's Wisconsin Synod, is very kind to me. I appreciate him. He's the one.
Okay, fair.
But like the Democrats just don't have any central identity.
Yeah.
I don't know why. It's just like, we know what Trump is for.
Yep.
It's the same criticism that I have for like mainline Protestantism, especially left-leaning mainline Protestantism. What are you? I know what you're not.
Right.
Because people are happy to say that.
Right.
You're not this kind of right-leaning conservative movement within Christianity. You're not Christian nationalism.
Right.
But what are you?
Right.
Which is why I just am beating the gong on, that's not the phrase to use. Hey, ringing the bell?
Beating the drum.
Beating the drum, thank you. Beating the gong sounds vaguely racist. I'm not going to lie. It doesn't sound good coming out of my mouth. I immediately regretted it.
No, you're fine.
But you're beating the drum on, like I beat the drum on liberation, that this is what Christianity should be about. It should be about liberation, not just of your soul, but also of your physical body.
Right.
If I talk to somebody and I say, Christ loves you,
right,
and that person is hungry, is that effective evangelism? No.
Right.
That's just me saying words to make me feel better.
Yep.
That's not what Christ calls us to. I mean, look at the story of the rich young ruler, right? Someone comes to Jesus. They say, hey, I've done all this stuff. I followed all the laws. What should I do? And Jesus is like, sell everything you own and give it to the poor, and then come and follow me. A lot of people try and write that off.
Yep.
And say, oh, it's a metaphor.
Right.
That's bullshit.
Right.
It is not a metaphor. That is what Jesus wanted him to do. Mm-hmm. And when we pretend like that's not the case, now I'm a hypocrite, right? Like I flew here, right? That we could have spent that money on the poor instead. So like I recognize I'm not there either, but at least I'm recognizing this is something we need to wrestle with. Mm-hmm. That we can't just deny our basic identity with a hope of gaining more power.
Yeah.
And then formatting a morality that fits with our power after the fact.
Yeah, I agree.
Like you have to start with a morality that's actually, that you can build on.
What is your encouragement to people out there who do feel discouraged? Maybe they just kind of feel like, this is cool, thank you, but like, I'm beat, man. You know, I'm beat, I'm tired. I know you feel tired, I feel tired. Yeah. What's your encouragement to folks who are listening? Like what, or maybe like your advice?
Yeah, well, I would say Trump is mortal. He's old. And he's not looking great, I got to say. He claims to be the healthiest person that's ever existed. That's between him and his doctor.
Is he really excited?
Oh, he certainly said he's the healthiest president that's ever held office. Which okay, you have to admit that's objectively funny. Right, he's not trying to be funny. That's objectively funny.
Right.
But Trump is not going to live forever.
Yeah.
Right. And when Trump dies, whenever that happens, I don't think any of this stuff is going to be able to hold together. I don't think Vance can hold it together because it's just all built around Trump's cult of personality. And Trump will not bring anyone beside him who could inherit that, because that person is always going to be a threat. So that's on the political side. Like, we just have to outlive Trump.
Yeah.
Easier for me to say, right? Because I'm not the one that's being deported.
Sure.
Or I'm not the one whose rights are being taken away right now.
Yep.
But that gives me some hope. I would say also, like, Christians have lived through a lot of horrific events throughout history, right? We have food. A lot of us have houses. That's amazing. Not to like downplay all of the suffering that's happening, but if we look throughout history, like there's a lot of horrific events that we could be living through. And we're living through this one. It's not great. A lot of people are being hurt. And also, like, there aren't Viking marauders coming and burning down my house and stealing my spouse.
Right.
Again, not to say that this stuff is really brutal. And also, I'd say, like, there's cracks in every edifice.
Yep.
Right? It might look like the Tower of Trump is perfect and, like, has no problems within it. But if you give it enough time, like, any plant would slowly work to topple that tower. So we have to be plants.
Right.
You have to find your way into the cracks.
Yeah.
And you have to expand out. And yeah, it's going to take a long time because you're a plant and you're fighting against concrete. But like, we can go out and plant seeds.
Yeah.
Martin Luther says, this is apocryphal. He didn't actually say this, but we like to say that he said this.
Fair.
Yeah.
At least you're honest about it.
Yeah. Well, I try to be at least honest about it. So he supposedly said this thing: if the world was going to end tomorrow, I would plant an apple tree today. And I think that's what those of us, especially those of us that have any modicum of power, can do, is that we can go out and plant trees.
Yeah.
We can plant seeds. We can exert power in the ways that we can. Today. I don't think the left is ever going to have like the same billionaire base that the right does.
Yeah.
Like theologically.
Yeah.
Because again, like no billionaire is gonna support my mission of getting rid of centralized wealth. Like there's just a if you support it, you wouldn't have it.
Exactly.
But what I think like the theological left has that the theological right doesn't is the backing of the divine.
Yeah.
Like I think God can definitely work through the conservative church.
Sure.
But the Holy Spirit will go where the Holy Spirit can do the Holy Spirit's work, where she can do the work that she needs to do.
Yeah.
And to be a part of that is an honor.
Yeah.
Even if it feels like I'm not doing anything whatsoever. If you can just be one little seed breaking the concrete.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that. I tell people often too, try and find moments of joy, because joy is resistance.
Yeah.
You know, like I think part of the head game that they want you to be a part of is to feel doom and gloom 24/7 and to feel like the world's in chaos. That's intentional. Definitely. You know, so find moments of joy where you can. If you have family, spend time with them. If you have the ability to turn off your phone for a couple hours, do that. You know, touch grass in a healthy way. That's not, it's not, I'm not telling you to touch grass as an insult, but you know, like get outside, you know, and realize that the world offline exists.
Yeah.
That's right around you. You know, I'm probably talking to myself a lot more in this moment, but you know, I think that's really important. So
yeah, I agree. Make those local connections.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's the area you can actually have some impact on. Yeah. Right. Like I can't swing any national election. I tried and nobody listened to me.
Yeah. Same. We all tried. Trust me. Yeah.
But what I can do is I can work on my local elections, right? Like, or I can maybe not explicitly because we're not supposed to be doing explicit endorsements or anything like that.
Sure.
But I can encourage certain issues, right? Like I can support the anti-homeless initiatives that are happening in La Crosse, where we're trying to eliminate homelessness, not against people who are unhoused.
Right.
But like I can go and talk at those meetings and talk about how important that is and how every person is a beloved child of God. I don't care if they're a habitual drug user or if they were a pedophile. Like they are still a beloved child of God, and we're failing them.
Yeah. If folks want to find your work, where can they find it?
Pastor Paul Drees. That's me.
Easy.
I'm the only one, baby.
Dude, thanks for coming in, man. This is great.
Tim, a pleasure.
So much fun, man. Always such a good time.
Yep.
That's it. We're out. You can cut the cameras now.